Hey, this is Vu, and today I'm going to be taking a look at opping on T side. And the important thing to recognize here is that you don't have the same advantages that you do when you're on CT side. That means any angle you peek out towards is likely to have an opper there waiting for you to peek and grab that free kill. Or they have a rifler in that area, knowing you're probably going to peek that angle, waiting for that and either doing some sort of flash repeaks or playing an angle where it's extremely hard for you to clear on your own. That means you need to be a lot more careful with your peaks when you're opping on T side, as opposed to being able to go hyper aggressive and find riflers holding weird angles where they don't really have a huge advantage or not being completely prepared for you. You have to assume that your opponents are always ready for you to do whatever you're going to do. Now, to try and deal with that, you can try and use your spawns if you want to get aggressive. Now, you can do this on CT side as well, but it's especially strong on T side where you're trying to catch counter terrorists in moments of transition. While they're transitioning into their spot from running there, for example, transitioning into window, trying to get from A to connector, or trying to get onto balcony from van at B. And probably the strongest area you can use this on any map is actually the mid spawn here on Mirage. Now there's plenty of maps where these spawns are very relevant, for example Dust 2 or Cache, but I think Mirage is probably the best example of a map where you have three great spawns that can really be utilized in different ways. You're even going to see with this mid spawn, a lot of pro teams will trade the op to a rifler just to utilize this spawn because it's so strong. What they're going to do is they're going to make their way up towards middle, the standard way, and try and catch an opper or a rifler on CT side, either setting up in window and not quite ready yet. You can beat them there sometimes, or you can catch a rifler trying to jump out window a lot of the time. This is the type of thing you're trying to do with an op to open up the round and give yourself as much of an advantage as possible. Past that early round type of thing, a lot of the time what you end up doing is locking down rotates or playing after plants, because the op is extremely good at those two things. A good example of this would be a B hit, or an early B hit, especially with a little bit of backup. For example, you can come for this pick towards the player on van, and if you get it, you can easily transition this into locking down the rotate of their market player. It's a long range angle, you can get the kill. If an opper peeks into you, it should be a free kill as well, and you can play the after plant from there. This is the type of thing that ops really excel at. You can allow your teammates to make their way into the bomb site and secure any close range angles, and you can try and make sure that you stop players from easily picking them off from angles like market, or potentially if you want to get a bit more aggressive, you can peek towards cat in certain scenarios, things like that. You can really lock down these long range angles. The same thing goes for an A hit. You can make your way over to A, you can go for a pick on the A player and catch someone jumping across, and then you can play that after plant after your riflers have made their way in. And this is one of the things that I really like to watch in a player like Device. A lot of the time his team will execute into a bomb site with full smokes, especially towards A, and rather than forcing his way in like some of the more aggressive oppers like Guardian or Kenny S occasionally will do, making your way out to Tetris or something like that, more often than not, I've found that Device will sit back on a ramp and allow his team to execute in front of him. And you may call this baiting, and it really is if you think about it. However, this is an example of positive baiting. What he's doing is he's focusing on smokes that the opponents could be pushing through, for example, jumping on top of ticket booth, crossing out to bench, or jumping into sandwich. And he's allowing his riflers to do their jobs, taking out the close angles so that he can play the after plant in an angle which is pretty advantageous. For example, if the bomb is planted at tri-stack, an op in a ramp can really lock down the round even in disadvantageous situations. So keeping that op alive can a lot of the time be the difference between winning a round and losing a round. So a lot of the time you want to be playing that op a little bit more safe than you might feel you need to, unless you have crazy reaction times to just outreact everybody. One of the things you want to be doing a lot of the time is allowing your teammates to flash you into angles so you can get good positioning, so you can hold certain angles, get a bit of clearance, and allow your riflers to do their job as well. A lot of the time I see people make mistakes in that they get crazy over aggressive and just get locked down by riflers, because you really have no chance to be able to get away from a flash or really catch people in the same way that a rifler could by getting in their face. You need to be making sure that you have the ability to swap between your aggressive and passive tendencies based on whether or not you have a spawn for an area, based on whether you have support, and based on the situation you're in. Another great example of this would be the famous or somewhat famous clip of Device trying to take out middle on Cash against Fallen. And this is at the PGL Major, I believe, where Device constantly gets flashed or Molotoved into certain angles to take control of an area because they recognize that the Opera that's holding the angle, especially on LAN where you don't really have Peeker's advantage, is going to have the disadvantage, or the Opera holding the angle will have the advantage rather, and they want to be able to lock down those areas and use their op as a lockdown tool, especially late round, instead of wasting it and allowing it to die early round. Now, another thing you can do if you've survived with the op into late round is you can walk out into certain areas, and this is something that's more of a team strategy, the same way that holding an angle while your teammates execute is more of a team strategy, unfortunately. Grouping up and walking out with a lead opper. A great example of this, again, is at B here on Mirage, where you can walk out leading with an op until a certain angle. For example, you can walk all the way out until here, and then have your riflers push out while you support them. And that means that by the time there's a rotate allowed to happen, a lot of the time you already have bomb site control. So this is perfect in something like a 3v3 where your opponents are likely to have one player in an area. For example, B, they might have one player sitting in the site or bench, and you can trade on that player, and again you can use that op as the lockdown tool that you need to hold onto the site and prevent any sort of retake. Now, unfortunately, what you're probably noticing here is a lot of what an op does on T side is a lot more passive than you might be looking forward to, and unfortunately that's the reality of opping on T side unless you're one of these crazy aggressive use your op as a rifle players. Now, there's nothing wrong with using your op as a rifle if you're good at it. However, you should probably recognize that it's not necessarily fundamental CS, and fundamental CS on T side is a lot more passive and thereby a lot less round changing in the ways that you might want in a pug. And that's why I've seen that a lot of oppers have trouble carrying on T side and pugs because you can try and find an entry, but if your opponents don't give it up and you're not playing a map where you have good spawns, or maybe you're getting unlucky with spawns, a lot of the time you can get totally screwed and not really find any ability to open up rounds in the way you want to. This is one of the reasons I tend to move towards the rifle a lot more often in pugs. However, there's nothing wrong with opping if you can get it done right, especially when you're looking at a team scenario where your teammates can actually utilize the op, flash you into certain angles, and give you the opportunities you need to carry rounds. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped.